Hi, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell. Thank you for joining us for this mini distraction. Like our full-length show, these minis will be different every time, only shorter. It's a busy world, and you don't have a lot of time. These episodes are for you. Well, Dr. Robert Putnam, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much. It's good to be with you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. You're really, you've been a guiding light, and I've learned a tremendous amount from you over the years, and it's really a genuine treat for me to be able to talk to you on my podcast.
I'm looking forward to it.
Let's start with distraction and your latest book, Our Kids, The American Dream in Crisis. What can we do about this? Because both of your books are really very closely related, and you're calling attention to the tremendous need to develop powerful, real, heartfelt connections.
And especially, can I add, especially ties, social ties, that what we call bridging social capital, that's jargon, but that just means ties that connect you to people unlike yourself.
Yes.
What's especially decayed in my adult lifetime is ties to people unlike ourselves. Increasingly, our ties are only to people like ourselves, people who have the same political views, the same educational background. You know, they live in the same places. We're living in these little bubbles, and therefore what we lack increasingly are a sense of connection to people unlike ourselves, and especially to other people's kids. This growing gap between rich kids and poor kids, and the fact that affluent people, I don't mean Bill Gates, I mean
I know.
people who are relatively well off.
People like you and me.
Right, exactly. The sense that we're responsible for our own biological kids, but we're not responsible for other people's kids, that is got to change. Because, in fact, it's costly to the country to have these poor kids who don't have the same chance. They have gifts from God, but they don't have the same chance to contribute. That can't be the right thing for the country. But I, in fact, am optimistic that we can solve this problem. Let me tell you quickly why I'm optimistic we can. Because we have before. Americans have previously been in exactly this same situation, a growing gap between rich and poor. I'm thinking about the Gilded Age at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, 1890, 1900, that sort of time. Very, very great gaps between rich and poor, very socially segregated communities in which the rich folks live on the Upper East Side and the poor folks live on the Lower East Side, a period of high immigration, and therefore that was causing lots of turbulence in America then and now. A period of very great political corruption. Money mattered hugely in politics then and now. A period of increasing political alienation because of a sense that the political parties then were not helping us grapple with our problems then and now. Sound familiar? I mean, there are a lot of parallels.
Did we have to have a war to solve it?
No, but it wasn't a war. Here's what happened.
Okay.
In a very short period of time, about 10 or 15 years actually, Americans began to recognize the problem and began to fix it. I'm going to give you two quick examples because I know we're running out of time here. But the first is we first had to recognize the problem. And there was a book written by a Danish-American journalist named Jacob Riis, a book called How the Other Half Lives.
Yes.
A book of photojournalism simply describing life in the tenement slums of the Lower East Side of New York, meant to be read in the silk stocking districts of the Upper East Side of Manhattan. And Riis essentially said, look, to his upper-class readers, look, this is the way people are living not 10 miles from you. Are you happy with that?
Right.
And some people said, sure, not my problem, their problem, but they worry about it. But some of the affluent people said, actually, I don't want to live in that kind of society now that I realize it. And that was the beginning of a reform movement in New York City led by a young, kind of aggressive politician named Teddy Roosevelt. And they began to make real changes in the lives that affected the lives of lower classes in the society on the Lower East Side. I'm not going to go through the whole history of the progressive era, but I do want to say just one thing.
Well, but maybe you're our Jacob Riis.
There's one very exemplary thing that Americans did. Actually, we even know when it happened. It happened in 1910, and we know where it happened. It happened initially in small towns in the Middle West, in Kansas and Nebraska and Iowa. To solve the problem of the growing opportunity gap in America between rich kids and poor kids, America invented the high school. For the first time in world history, people said, we're going to create a 4-year secondary school here in this town that will be free for every kid in town. Every kid gets a free 4-year high school education. Never happened in world history before. And it was a hard sell because you had to say to the local, rich lawyer and banker and rich farmer who had already paid for their kids to get a private secondary education, you had to say to them, you ought to pay for other people's kids to have a secondary education too.
Yes.
It was a hard sell, but it turned out to be the best public policy decision Americans have ever made because it simultaneously raised the whole economic growth rate of the country, basically accounts for most of American economic growth through most of the 20th century, and at the same time it leveled the playing field. So it's a twofer. It both increased everybody's well-being, but it also leveled the playing field. It's a great idea. I mean, now I'm not saying that's what we need to do now, but I'm trying to say Americans, ordinary Americans, faced with recognizing this problem of the growing gaps and the need to worry about other people's kids, eventually we did, and it turned out to be a terrific turning point in our whole history. I mean that.
Yes.
And so it's not like I think this is, we can't fix this problem. I think we can fix the problem. The idea before did not come, the high school did not come from Harvard. The idea of high school came from these small towns, and it did not come from Washington. It came from ordinary people trying to fix the problem in East Podunk, and it turned out to be such a good idea that it spread very rapidly. So I'm not trying to say that I think the high school is now the answer. My team has consulted with about 50 experts of all backgrounds and parties and disciplines and so on, and we've recently posted on the web a compendium of the best suggestions for maybe trying to fix the problem today in America.
Oh, what website?
It's called theopportunitygap.com.
Wonderful. The Opportunity
And you'll find there a free 75-page booklet that just has all these suggestions about things we could actually do, and they're things we know would work. This is not fundamentally a policy wonkery question in which we don't know how to do it. We know what to do. Early childhood education, for example, is a great start. And doing things to make it easier for kids to get through community college is another great idea, and there are a lot of good ideas. The problem, however, is not good ideas. It's that the rest of us have to realize that we have got to invest in other people's kids, not just for those kids' benefit, but for our kids' benefit.
Absolutely. And recognizing it both in a practical sense, but also a human sense.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, that we're all interconnected.
We are.
And no, this I'm all right, Jack mentality kills us all.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Well, you're doing magnificent work. I just can't tell you how much I admire you and your team, and I think you've really put your finger on a solution that transcends politics. There's no red state, blue state here. It's
right.
The future of our culture and civilization, and begins by banding together and recognizing that we're all in this thing called life together.
That's absolutely right, Ned. I really appreciate your questions.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an honor and a privilege.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. That's it. If you have an issue, a question, or a suggestion, call us toll-free at 844-55-CONNECT or email at connect@distractionpodcast.com. Or go to our website at distractionpodcast.com. To hear more mini and full-length episodes, subscribe to Distraction on iTunes. And thanks so much for listening. Distraction is produced by Collisions, the podcast division of CRN International. Collisions, podcasts for curious people. Our music theme was created by Mark Berman.